Today is the 9th of September 2010, and this is the 51st time we're speaking on the in the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas. Now we come to Sutta number 123, Acchariya abbhuta Sutta, wonderful and marvelous. I consider this as one of the least important suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya, so hopefully we can go through it fast. That's what I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now a number of monks were sitting in the assembly hall where they had met together on returning from their alms round after their meal, when this discussion arose among them. It is wonderful, friends, it is marvelous how mighty and powerful is the Tathagata, or is able to know about the Buddhas of the past, who attained to final Nibbana, cut the tangle of proliferation, broke the cycle, ended the round, and surmounted all suffering. That for those blessed ones, their birth was thus, their names were thus, their clans were thus, their virtue was thus, their state of concentration was thus, their wisdom was thus, their abiding in attainments was thus, their liberation was thus. When this was said, the venerable Ananda told the monks, friends, Tathagatas are wonderful and have wonderful qualities. Tathagatas are marvelous and have marvelous qualities. However, their discussion was interrupted, for the Blessed One rose from meditation when it was evening, went to the assembly hall and sat down on a seat made ready. Then he addressed the monks thus, Monks, for what discussion are you sitting together here now? And what was your discussion that was interrupted? Here, Venerable Sir, we were sitting in the assembly hall where we had met together on returning from our alms round after our meal. And this discussion arose among us. It is wonderful, friends, it is marvelous. How mighty and powerful is the Tathagata, etc. When this was said, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Ananda said to us, friends, Tathagatas are wonderful and have wonderful qualities. Tathagatas are marvelous and have marvelous qualities. This was our discussion, Venerable Sir, that was interrupted when the Blessed One arrived. Then the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Ananda. That being so, Ananda, explain more fully the Tathagata's wonderful and marvelous qualities. Stop here for a moment. So, because Venerable Ananda said that all Buddhas, Tathagatas, are wonderful and have wonderful qualities, are marvelous and have marvelous qualities. So the Buddha asked him to explain more. And he said, I have heard and learned this, Venerable Sir, from the Blessed One's own lips. Mindful and aware, Ananda, the Bodhisattva appeared in the Tusita heaven. That mindful and fully aware, the Bodhisattva appeared in the Tusita heaven. This I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. Mindful and fully aware, the Bodhisattva remained in the Tusita heaven. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. For the whole of his lifespan, the Bodhisattva remained in the Tusita heaven. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. Mindful and fully aware, the Bodhisattva passed away from the Tusita heaven and descended into his mother's womb. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. Stop here for a moment. This paragraph number 3, the Bodhisattva appeared in the Tusita heaven. According to the commentaries, this was after his life as Vesantara. In the Vesantara Jataka, there's a story about the Bodhisattva. He gave away his wife, gave away his 2 children to a heartless beggar who beat them because he wanted to perfect the parami of giving. But this I find it hard to accept because that Jataka story contradicts the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. The Buddha says, good or wise man's charity must not harm himself and must not harm others. So this story about the Vesantara Jataka, I think, was cooked up by some later monks. It cannot be that the Buddha cultivated this parami of giving in that Jataka. In fact, all the Jataka stories you find a bit far-fetched. Like animals being able to talk and all that, which is not possible. So all these Jataka stories were, folk tales, Indian folk tales that they incorporated into Buddhism. What we know from the Sutta is that the Buddha in the past life was born as a Brahmin Jotipala at the time of the Buddha Kassapa. And in that lifetime, his good friend Gatikara brought him to meet the Buddha Kassapa. And after hearing the Dhamma, he renounced, became a monk, which indicates that he most likely had attained stream entry after hearing the Dhamma. And then after that, he practiced as a monk and attained at least the first jhana, because when he came back in his last life as Siddhartha Gautama, as a small boy, he could enter the first jhana under the Jambu tree. So from that time of Buddha Kassapa, he was reborn in the Tusita heaven. And after a long stay in the Tusita heaven, he came back as Siddhartha Gautama. So that is more likely what happened, not anything to do with the Vesantara Jataka. Then paragraph number 6, mindful and fully aware, the Bodhisattva passed away from the Tusita heaven and descended into his mother's womb. This we can accept because there is a sutta where the Buddha in the Anguttara Nikaya says there are 4 types of beings. One enters the womb unknowing, stays in the womb unknowing, and comes out unknowing. Another one enters the womb knowing, stays there unknowing, and comes out unknowing. The third one enters the womb knowing, stays there knowing, but comes out unknowing. The fourth one, the best, enters the womb knowing, stays there knowing, and comes out of the womb knowing. That means mindful all the time. So the Buddha said he belongs to the last category. So there's one thing. The other thing you must notice from the paragraph 6 is that there is something that descends into the mother's womb. This we can call the soul. But of course, in the Buddha's teachings, the soul is different from the Christian soul. In the Buddha's teachings, the soul is just a bundle of energy, just like a human being is a bundle of energy. So the soul is also a bundle of energy. In the suttas, it's called a Gandhabha, that being that enters the womb. In other books, it's called the intermediate being, intermediate state of existence. In Chinese, we call Ling Hun, Ling Fan. Okay, and I come to paragraph 7. Here onwards, some of the things mentioned in this sutta, I find is a bit far-fetched, a bit hard to accept. Number 7. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva passed away from the Tusita heaven and descended into his mother's womb, then a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared in the world with its gods, its maras and its brahmas. In this generation with its recluses and brahmins, with its princes and its people, and even in those abysmal world interspaces of vacancy, gloom and utter darkness, where the moon and sun, mighty and powerful as they are, cannot make their light prevail, there too a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared, and the beings born there perceive each other by that light. So other beings indeed have appeared here, and this 10,000-fold world system shook and quaked and trembled, and there too a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, 4 young deities came to guard him at the 4 quarters, so that no humans or non-humans or anyone at all could harm the Bodhisattva or his mother. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, she became intrinsically virtuous, refraining from killing living beings, from taking what is not given, from misconduct in sensual pleasures, from false speech, and from wines, liquors, and intoxicants, which are the basis of negligence. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, no sensual thought arose in her concerning men, and she was inaccessible to any man having a lustful mind. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, she obtained the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, and furnished and endowed with them, she enjoyed herself with them. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, no kind of affliction arose in her. She was blissful and free from bodily fatigue. She saw the Bodhisattva within her womb with all his limbs, lacking no faculty. Suppose a blue, yellow, red, white, or brown thread was strung through a fine beryl gem of purest water, 8-faceted, well cut, and a man with good sight were to take it in his hand and review it thus. This is a fine beryl gem of purest water, 8-faceted, well cut, and through it is strung a blue, yellow, red, white, or brown thread. So too, when the Bodhisattva had descended into his mother's womb, no kind of affliction arose in her. She was blissful and free from bodily fatigue. He saw the Bodhisattva within her womb with all his limbs, lacking no faculty, etc. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. Stop here for a moment. This is what I have just read. There are a few things here I find it hard to accept. Like paragraph 7. When the Bodhisattva passed away from the Tusita heaven and descended into his mother's womb, a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared in the world. You must remember that the Bodhisattva before enlightenment was like many other beings, even including Aryans. When Aryans are reborn, there's no great immeasurable light appearing in the world. So it's not logical to think that before the Buddha was enlightened, he was already very special. So that's one thing. The other one is in paragraph 8. When the Bodhisattva descended into his mother's womb, 4 young deities came to guard him at the 4 quarters, so that no humans or non-humans or anyone could harm the Bodhisattva or his mother. In the Buddha's Dhamma, we don't need anyone to protect us. What protects us is our karma. We have the blessing. The Buddha says, Kamma sakumhi, kamma dayado, kamma yoni, kamma bandhu, kamma patisarana. Remember the chant. So this is another thing. And then in number 12, paragraph 12, she saw the Bodhisattva within her womb with all his limbs, lacking no faculty. How can she see the baby in the womb? She doesn't have X-ray eyes. Now I come to 13, paragraph 13. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. 7 days after the birth of the Bodhisattva, his mother died and reappeared in the Tusita heaven. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. Other women give birth after carrying the child in the womb for 9 or 10 months, but not so the Bodhisattva's mother. The Bodhisattva's mother gave birth after carrying him in her womb for exactly 10 months. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. Other women give birth seated or lying down, but not so the Bodhisattva's mother. The Bodhisattva's mother gave birth to him standing up. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, first gods received him, then human beings. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, he did not touch the earth, 4 young gods received him and set him before his mother, saying, "Rejoice, O queen, a son of great power has been born to you." This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. Stop here for a moment. Of these qualities I just read, these few, a bit doubtful. Number 15. Other women give birth seated or lying down, but not so the Bodhisattva's mother. The Bodhisattva's mother gave birth to him standing up. This a bit hard to believe. And then 16. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, first gods received him, then human beings. This also is a bit far-fetched. Number 17. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, he did not touch the earth. 4 young gods received him and set him before his mother, saying, "Rejoice, O queen, a son of great power has been born to you." So you see here, they say the Bodhisattva's mother was called the queen. This shows it's a later writing. In the suttas, we know that the Buddha's father was not a king, although he was called Raja Suddhodana. He was just one of many Rajas. Not all Rajas are kings. From the Dhammacharya Sutta, we know that the Buddha was a citizen of Kosala, and the king of Kosala was Pasenadi. So okay, now 18. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, he came forth unsullied, unsmeared by water or humus or blood or any kind of impurity, clean and unsullied. Suppose there were a gem placed on kasi cloth, then the gem would not smear the cloth or the cloth the gem. Why is that? Because of the purity of both. So too, when the Bodhisattva came forth from the mother's womb, he came forth unsullied, unsmeared by water or humus or blood or any kind of impurity. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, 2 jets of water appeared to pour from the sky, one cool and one warm, for bathing the Bodhisattva and his mother. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. As soon as the Bodhisattva was born, he stood firmly with his feet on the ground. Then he took 7 steps north, and with a white parasol held over him, he surveyed each quarter and uttered the words of the leader of the herd. "I am the highest in the world. I am the best in the world. I am the foremost in the world. This is my last birth. Now there is no renewal of being for me." This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. I heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, then a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared in the world with its gods, its Maras and its Brahmas. In this generation with its recluses and Brahmins, with its princes and its people, and even in those abysmal world interspaces of vacancy, gloom and utter darkness, where the moon and the sun, mighty and powerful as they are, cannot make their light prevail. There too a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared, and the beings born there perceive each other by that light. So other beings indeed have appeared here. And this 10,000 world system shook and quaked and trembled, and there too a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared. That when the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, then a great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of the gods appeared. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. Stop here for a moment. Going back now, I look at paragraph 18. When the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, he was unsullied, unsmeared by water or humus or blood or any kind of impurity. This is also very hard to believe. You find in all religions that they tend to glorify the founder of the religion. So you find in the Christian religion, they say that Jesus was born from the Virgin Mother. In the early Mahayana books, they also say the same thing. They say that the Buddha's mother was a virgin, gave birth to him. So this is one of those things. In 19, when the Bodhisattva came forth from his mother's womb, 2 jets of water appeared to fall from the sky to bathe the Bodhisattva and his mother. This is also a bit far-fetched. Number 20, as soon as he was born, he stood firmly with his feet on the ground, took 7 steps, and said, "I am the highest in the world," etc. This is also hard to believe. Then 21, when the Bodhisattva came forth from the mother's womb, great immeasurable light surpassing the splendor of gods appeared in the world. And not only that, and the 10,000 world system shook and quaked and trembled. So this is also very hard to believe. Yeah. Okay, now 22. That being so, Ananda, remember this too as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. Here, Ananda, for the Tathagata, feelings are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. Perceptions are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. Thoughts are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. Remember this too, Ananda, as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Tathagata. Venerable Sir, since for the Blessed One, feelings are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. Perceptions are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. Thoughts are known as they arise, as they are present, as they disappear. This too I remember as a wonderful and marvelous quality of the Blessed One. That is what the Venerable Ananda said. The teacher approved. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Venerable Ananda's words. This last part is Dhamma. That for the Tathagata, feelings are known as they arise, as they are present, as it disappears. Similarly for perceptions and thoughts. So it appears like originally this sutta was not so long. Probably they added some of these things. Just like people adding sugar and salt and spice and everything nice. So okay. Since it's not an important sutta, we'll go to the next sutta. Number 124, Bakkula Sutta. This one also, some of the things here may be a bit... Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Venerable Bakkula was living at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, a squirrel sanctuary. Then Acchariya Kassapa, a former companion of the Venerable Bakkula in his lay life, went to the Venerable Bakkula and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and asked the Venerable Bakkula, Friend Bakkula, how long is it since you went forth? It is 80 years since I went forth, friend. Friend Bakkula, in these 80 years, how many times have you engaged in sexual intercourse? Friend Kassapa, you should not ask me such a question as that. You should ask me such a question as this. Friend Bakkula, in these 80 years, how many times have perceptions of sensual desire arisen in you? Friend Bakkula, in these 80 years, how many times have perceptions of sensual desire arisen in you? Friend Kassapa, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall any perception of sensual desire to have ever arisen in me. I stop here for a moment. So what follows in the brackets was added later by later monks. So we won't read that. Now, according to the commentaries to the Majjhima Nikaya, they say that Venerable Bakkula renounced at the age of 80 years old. So since he has gone forth 80 years, he's supposed to be 160 years old. This is a bit hard to believe because the Buddha himself passed away at the age of 80 years at that time. And the Buddha is supposed to have a long life. So hard to believe that he was 160 years old. Friend, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall any perception of ill will, any perception of cruelty to have ever arisen in me. This is maybe possible for some people because they might have been a past life Arya. They may not have perception or thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and perception of cruelty. Friend, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall any thought of sensual desire to have ever arisen in me. Friend, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall any thought of ill will, any thought of cruelty to have ever arisen in me. Friend, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall ever having accepted a robe from a householder, ever having worn a robe given by a householder, ever having cut a robe with a cutter, ever having sewn a robe with a needle, ever having colored a robe with dye, ever having sewn a robe at the Katina time, ever having worked on making robes for my companions in the holy life. I'll stop here for a moment. So, this sutta is trying to say that Venerable Bakkula was a very ascetic monk. He has this wonderful and marvelous quality, that he doesn't have thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty. And then his ascetic he practices these ascetic practices. So he does not accept a robe from a householder. That means he collects this pangsukula cloth from corpses and all that, and he sews it into a robe. But then if he doesn't sew, here it doesn't say, he doesn't sew a robe also. So how to wear a robe? Without ever having sewn a robe with a needle, that's a bit far-fetched, because a monk every now and then, when his robe gives way, he has to repair his robes, especially during the Buddha's time. So a bit, maybe he's very ascetic, this monk, so they stretch it a bit. Friend, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall ever having accepted an invitation to a meal. This is possible for some monks. Ever having given rise to the thought, oh, may someone invite me to a meal. Ever having sat down inside a house. Ever having eaten inside a house. Now, this is possible for certain ascetic monks. They only want to beg for their food. Just like Venerable Kassapa, he doesn't go to house dana. Friend, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall ever having grasped at the signs and features of a woman. Ever having taught the Dhamma to a woman, even as much as a 4-line stanza, ever having gone to the nuns' quarters, ever having taught the Dhamma to a bhikkhuni, ever having taught the Dhamma to a female probationer, ever having taught the Dhamma to a female novice. This seems a bit far-fetched. Seems like he never talks to a woman or so. Friend, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall ever having given the going forth, ever having given the full ordination, ever having given dependence, ever having had a novice wait on me. Sorry for a moment, that shows he does not accept disciples. He lives alone. Friend, in the 80 years since I went forth, I do not recall ever having bathed in a bathhouse, ever having bathed with bath powder, ever having undertaken the work of massaging the limbs of my companions in the holy life, ever having had an affliction arise in me, even for as long as it takes to milk a cow, ever having taken medicine, even as much as a piece of gall nut, ever having used a bolster, ever having made up a bed, ever having entered upon residence for the rains in a resting place inside a village. Let's stop here for a moment. So here shows that he's very ascetic. He doesn't mix with other monks, so he doesn't do things like what they call in Thailand upatak, like massaging a senior monk or serving other monks and all that. But here he doesn't talk about serving other monks. But he says he never gets sick at all. Apparently he's a very, very fit monk. But one thing about ascetic monks, because they are very ascetic, they live in the forest, they're very pure lifestyle, they are extremely fit. I've seen some forest monks in Thailand, even though they are older than me, but they at that time when I went to Thailand, at that time when I first went to Thailand, I was 38 years old, and I went on Tudong, this how do you say, going on, how do you say, Tudong, Long Pa, how do you say, like going to the forest, with this 45-year-old monk. At that time, I was surprised, he was much fitter than me, being older than me. Well, of course, not that much difference. But like when we walk up the hill, on the level ground, he walks so fast. When he goes up the hill, he doesn't slow down. Just the same speed when he goes up the hill. At that time, I was very surprised. Then later, I found that actually the lifestyle of a forest monk makes you very, very fit. Sometimes you get caught in the rain and all that. Now you're sleeping in the forest, you get wet and all that. You don't get sick. Because the mind is strong. When the mind is strong, the body also is strong. Like nowadays, doctors say a lot of people's sickness is mind-made. Friend, for 7 days after going forth, I ate the country's alms food as a debtor. On the 8th day, final knowledge arose. Stop here for a moment. So he went forth on the 8th day. He attained arahanthood. This shows he's somebody with great, what they call paramis, these perfections of character from past life, very probably past life Arya. Then Acchariya Kassapa said, I will receive the going forth in this Dhammavinaya. I will receive the full ordination. And Acchariya Kassapa received the going forth in this Dhammavinaya. He received the full ordination. Stop here for a moment. So even though this friend, Acchariya Kassapa, asked Venerable Bakkula to be ordained, but Venerable Bakkula, as we read earlier, he does not ordain anybody, so probably he brought him to other monks to ordain. And soon, not long after his full ordination, dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent and resolute, the Venerable Kassapa, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, here and now entered upon and abided in the supreme goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the home life into homelessness. He knew directly, birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming to any state of being. And the Venerable Kassapa became one of the Arahants. Stop here for a moment. So this Acchariya Kassapa was very impressed by his friend's description of his various wonderful and marvelous qualities. So impressed that he asked to ordain. And he ordained, and a few years later, probably he became an Arahant. Then on a later occasion, the Venerable Bakkula took a key and went from cell to cell. Here, cell to cell means room to room, the kutis, saying, come forth, venerable sirs, come forth, venerable sirs. Today I shall attain final Nibbana. Then seated in the midst of the Sangha of monks, the Venerable Bakkula attained final Nibbana. So being Arahant was well cultivated. When his time came to enter Nibbana, he knew when he was going to enter Nibbana, so he informed the monks. So they came to see him, and he attained final Nibbana. According to the commentaries, he's a type of monk who does not want to trouble other monks. So he entered, when he was about to pass away, he entered into the fire casino, meditated on fire, and used that fire to light his body, cremate his body, so all remained was ashes. It's possible for some Arahants who have this, this is one of the psychic powers.